WHGE 95.3 FM. Coming up, the Open Eye.
Those of us that indulge in or commit intellectual violence don't do so for the pleasure of mental masturbation or ego diddling. We do so because the chains of oppression on our people's minds are deep and difficult to remove.
Good morning, my children of the sun. Welcome to the Open Eye on WHGE 95.3 FM. I'm your host, Third Eye Optometrist Patrice Gibbs, here to get your eye open. That's right. And as we always tell you, every generation has its purpose. Ours is to reveal the truth and reverse the brainwashing. And that's what we do here on the Open Eye. That's word. Let me tell you something, my children of the sun tuned in across the nation, across the world. This is Patrice Gibbs, and you're listening to The Open Eye, the show where we don't blink. We don't look away, and we sure don't let anybody else tell us what to see. We've got a lot to talk about today. America is shaking. The people are waking, and the truth is standing right at the front door and knocking like a bill collector. And on this show, we answer. We open that door. We confront the mummy head on. This week, we watched the president use dehumanizing language to talk about immigrants, human beings, calling them garbage, to the cheers of a crowd that has forgotten its own immigrant roots. We watch lawmakers stay silent, complicitly hanging off them like a cheap suit. And we watch the same people who claim America first turn their backs on the very service members they use for political theater. We are living in a time where lies get applause. And the truth has to fight for a microphone. But not here. Not today. Not on the Open Eye. We're going to talk about trauma, the trauma black folks endure for centuries with no doctors, no counseling, no national healing, no reparations, nothing but our own resilience. And yet, they marvel at our survival like it's magic. It's not magic, it's miracle, discipline, culture, and divine ancestry. We're also going to discuss what scholars across 4 centuries have been warning. Empires don't fall from the outside, they rot from within. And if you're paying attention, you can smell the cracks in the foundation. But don't get it twisted. The Open Eye is not about despair. It's about clarity. It's about power. It's about seeing. Because when you open your eyes, you open your mind. And when you open your mind, you become ungovernable by lies. So sit back, lean forward, do what you want to do. Don't close your eyes now. We're just getting started. This is The Open Eye. I'm Patrice Gibbs. Hey, Steve. I see you there, Sherry. All right. Hey, Howard. All right. Let's get them going here. Oh, you know what?
The views and opinions expressed on Open Eye are those of the hosts, guests, and contributors, and do not reflect the policy or position of WHGE 95.3 FM, nor our sponsor, the Delaware Center for Homeless Vets. Any content provided by Open Eye's hosts, guests, or contributors are theirs and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, company, or individual.
WHGE 95.3 FM. Let's start with something like we always do, some history here, right quick. All right. In 1912, in a small segregated town of Fort Scott, Kansas, a child was born who would go on to redefine what a camera could do, what an image could mean, and what it truly looked like when art confronted injustice. His name was Gordon Parks. And though he entered the world under the weight of poverty, racism, and limited opportunity, he rose through sheer will, brilliance, and self-teaching to become one of the most influential documentarians of the American 20th century. Parks' journey was neither linear nor easy. He taught himself photography as a teenager. Armed with little more than curiosity and a used camera he purchased for a few dollars. What emerged from that simple instrument was a lifetime of imagery that blended artistry, advocacy, and unflinching truth. He became the first African-American staff photographer and writer for Life magazine, a position that shattered racial barriers and placed a black lens, a black mind, and black experience inside one of America's most powerful media institutions. Parks understood early that the camera was not just a device for taking pictures. It was a weapon against injustice, a tool for social change, and a mirror held up to a nation still running from its own reflection. His work consistently exposed the realities of racism, poverty, segregation, and systemic violence. He photographed the families of Harlem, the anguish of gang wars in New York, the quiet dignity of the working poor, and the everyday struggles of Black Americans who live beneath the shadow of Jim Crow while fighting to stand in the light of dignity. He did not simply document the civil rights movement, he became part of its voice. His 1956 photo essay, The Restraints, Open and Hidden, is still regarded as one of the most searing visual indictments of American apartheid ever published. Through Parks, America was forced to confront the cruelty of segregation, not an abstract policy, not as human suffering etched into the eyes of Black mothers and the hands of Black laborers. But Parks was more than a photographer. He was a writer, a poet, a novelist, a screenwriter, and a film director. A polymath who refused to be boxed in by limitations society imposed on Black talent. He wrote several books, including his memoir, Choice of Weapons, and penned screenplays that led to directing films such as The London Tree, the first major Hollywood studio film directed by an African American. Later, he would help spark the Blaxploitation era. I'm gonna get with that. With the groundbreaking classic Shaft. Y'all remember that? What united all these forms, film, photography, writing, was his unwavering commitment to portraying the humanity of Black people in a world determined to deny it. Parks' life work was a rebuttal to white supremacy, a refusal to accept invisibility, and a declaration that Black perspectives were not only worthy, they were necessary. He once explained the core of his mission with piercing clarity. I suffered first as a child from discrimination, poverty, so I think it was a natural follow from that I should use my camera to speak for people who are unable to speak for themselves. Gordon Parks. That statement is not just a reflection of his life, it is a testimony to his purpose. Parks understood that lived experience carries its own authority. The child who survived racial terror became the man who confronted it artistically. The boy who endured humiliation became the artist who forced America to see the dignity of those it oppressed. Gordon Parks' legacy is monumental. He expanded the role of the black storyteller. He opened the door for black photographers, journalists, filmmakers, and creatives who came after him. And most importantly, he left behind a body of work that functions as both historical record and moral compass. His images still speak loudly today, reminding us that art is not merely decorative. It is political. It is transformative. It is a mirror and a megaphone. Parks proved that one man with a camera could challenge a nation. And he did it. It's an open eye. Hey, Abdullah. All right. Hey, Sister Tracy, good to see you there. All right. When I was talking about Gordon Parks, I mentioned how he helped spark the so-called blaxploitation era. All right? Let's talk about something that Hollywood and too many so-called film historians keep getting wrong. Yes, Melvin Van Peebles' Sweet Sweetback's badass song and Gordon Parks' Shaft ignited what the industry slapped with the label blaxploitation. Sweetback was the blueprint, raw, independent, unapologetically black. Shaft was the breakthrough, slick, mainstream box office power. Together, they opened the door for Pam Grier, for Richard Roundtree, for a whole era of black visibility on screen. But here's the problem. Somewhere along the way, that label, blaxploitation, became a lazy catch-all, a dismissive umbrella thrown over every black film of the 1970s. Whether it fit the genre or not, it became a way to trivialize our storytelling, to flatten an entire decade of creative brilliance into a caricature of pimps, players, and gunfights. And I hate it. Because that era produced gems, true cinematic masterpieces, films that had nothing to do with the so-called blaxploitation formula. For instance, Barry Gordy gave us Lady Sings the Blues, a powerful, elegant portrait of Billie Holiday that earned Diana Ross an Oscar nomination. He also produced the Bingo Long, Traveling All-Stars, and Motor Kings, one of my favorites. A joyful, poignant look at Negro League baseball starring Billy D. Williams, James Earl Jones, and Richard Pryor. That's black excellence on full display. That's not all. We had Bill Cosby, the Bill Cosby, Sidney Poitier collaborations. Uptown Saturday Night, Let's Do It Again, A Piece of the Action. Movies that show black joy, black brilliance, and black camaraderie without a single Superfly trope in sight. And we had Coolie High. That's one of the greatest coming-of-age films ever made in this country, period, hands down. A film so emotionally resonant that Hollywood remade it badly and still couldn't capture the original feel of the original movie. And we had Sparkle, a film that gave us music, heartbreak, ambition, sisterhood, and some of the most unforgettable performances of that decade. Sparkle wasn't exploitation, it was aspiration. It captured the struggle and shine of black women chasing dreams in the industry designed to swallow them whole. That film still lives in our cultural memory for a reason. See, many of these films were quality, standout works, crafted with intention, vision, and pride. They portrayed our lives with dignity, humor, soul, and intelligence. So no, every black film in the 1970s was not blaxploitation. That label was often weaponized by critics who weren't paying attention, who didn't understand the cultural context, or who simply wanted to reduce black creativity to a fad. But we know better. That era was a renaissance. It was liberation through art. It was the moment black filmmakers and black actors seized the screen and said, we will tell our stories our way. And whether those stories were gritty, street rebellions, or tender love stories, or musical dramas like Sparkle, those films mattered. Hollywood may lump them all together, but history, our history, knows the difference. And we honor every last one of those classics. It's the Open Eye. WHGE 95.3 FM. You often hear me talk about allies. And allies are great to have. But it's nothing like an accomplice. Let me tell you something about how history gets rewritten. John Brown was not called insane because his mind was broken. He was called insane because his morals were intact. Yeah. See, in a nation built on slavery, built on buying, selling, whipping, and branding of human beings, any white man who believed black people were fully human was automatically labeled unstable. Not because he was irrational, but because he refused to play along with America's greatest lie. John Brown did the unthinkable. He rejected white supremacy completely. He said slavery wasn't just wrong, it was evil. And he believed freedom wasn't something to negotiate, it was something to fight for. That made him a threat. Not because he was violent. America was already drowning in violence. You kidding me? He was a threat because he had moral clarity. And so the politicians, the newspapers, the slave-owning class all did the same thing. They pathologized him. They said something must be wrong with his mind, because if he was sane, then the nation was guilty. Labeling him insane became a way to protect the system. See, this fits right into the racist science of that era. Doctors literally invented a fake mental disorder called drapetomania, the so-called illness that made enslaved Africans run away. Imagine the insanity it takes to believe that the desire for freedom is a disease, while people doing the enslaving are the picture of hell. So understand the logic. If a black person ran away from slavery, they were insane. If a white person opposed slavery, they were insane. The only sanity America respected was obedience. Here's the truth the history books try to bury. John Brown wasn't crazy. He was one of the few white Americans whose humanity was still functioning. He saw black people as equals, and he put his life where his principles were. His real crime wasn't Harper's Ferry. His real crime was crossing the color line of conscience. And that is why they call him insane. Because if John Brown was right, then the entire nation was wrong. This is the Open Eye, reminding you to look deeper, think sharper, and recognize the lies they sell as history. WHGE 95.3 FM. All right. Pam Bondi says they're seeking the death penalty for the man who fired at 2 National Guardsmen. And look, no one is defending violence against the troops. If someone's attacked soldiers, there must be accountability. No question, okay? But accountability doesn't stop at the trigger man. Accountability must also rise up the chain of command to the people who put those soldiers in harm's way for political theater. Because here's what nobody in power wants to talk about. Those guardsmen weren't deployed for national security. They weren't deployed for a real emergency. They were deployed because powerful people needed a distraction, a photo op, a talking point, a manufactured crisis to bury the Orange Disaster's own scandals, including his deeply troubling ties to a convicted child predator. They were used as props, not as protectors, not as patriots, props. And that is a betrayal. What's the punishment for that? For leaders who misuse the military to polish their image, redirect headlines, and create the illusion of strength while hiding their own weakness. What's the punishment for sending young men and women, many barely out of high school, into a situation designed not to defend democracy, but to defend a politician's poll numbers? What's the consequence for recklessly endangering troops to shape a narrative? Because let's be very clear. Turning our troops into political armor is not patriotism, it's cowardice. It's corruption. It's a violation of public trust, and it spits in the face of every family who sends loved ones to serve this country. Patriotism is protecting soldiers, not exploiting them. Not staging militarized photo ops that distract from criminal associations and personal disgrace. Not using the people, including soldiers, as tools for propaganda. Yet we punish the gunmen, while the architects of the stunt walk away untouched. The ones who pull political strings instead of the trigger. The ones who made decisions that placed troops in unnecessary danger. The ones who treated the National Guard like a personal public relations firm. So if we're talking accountability, if we're talking justice, if we're talking consequence, then the people responsible for recognizing the image of our military must be held to the same standard as anyone else who recklessly endangers lives. Okay? Any country deserves leaders who value truth over theatrics. These troops deserve leaders who value their lives over political optics. And the people deserve a government that understands one simple principle. The military serves the nation, not the ego of any one man. This is the Open Eye. WHGE 95.3 FM on Patrice Gibbs. All right, let's get this straight. Fishermen, working men, poor men trying to feed their families are gunned down at sea with no drugs found on their boats, no trial, no hearing, not even the courtesy of an accusation that holds water. They are executed on suspicion alone. And that suspicion was even shaken. Okay? But a former president, a man convicted, not accused, convicted of trafficking hundreds of tons of cocaine into the United States, He gets a pardon. He gets redemption. He gets the grace that the system refuses to extend to the poor and powerless. Help me understand the math of this morality. Because this isn't just hypocrisy. This is a window into the architecture of a system built on two sets of rules, excuse me. One for those who have power and one for those who do not. Let's talk about the fishermen. They had no political connections, no lobbyists, no billion-dollar industries backing them. They had boats, nets, families, and the wrong skin tone in the wrong place at the wrong time. In the eyes of the state, that was enough to make them disposable. No evidence, no problem. No drugs, not necessary. No due process was never expected. Because when you are poor, when you are marginalized, when you live on the edge of someone else's empire, your life is cheap and your death is convenient. Now let's talk about that president. A man whose drug trafficking wasn't a rumor, it was a pipeline. Hundreds of tons of cocaine don't move quietly. That's infrastructure, that's logistics. That's relationship with cartels, bankers, government officials, shipping companies. That kind of crime devastates communities for generations. That kind of crime fuels mass incarceration. That kind of crime pumps violence into American streets and into our communities. And yet, somehow, he's forgiven. Not rehabilitated, not redeemed, not reformed, just pardoned by the same political machine that claims to be fighting a war on drugs. Think about the message this sends. If you're a fisherman with nothing on your boat, you can be killed. If you're a president with cocaine by the ton, you can be saved. That's not a justice system, that's a caste system in a police uniform. This is what people mean when they say the system isn't broken, it's working exactly as intended. The drug war isn't about ending drugs, it's about controlling populations. Come on. It's about criminalizing poverty. It's about punishing the powerless while shielding the powerful. We watch this nation build prisons for addicts while building partnerships with traffickers in suits. We watch young black men get life sentences for grams while political elites traffic tons with immunity. And we watch the president, guilty of crimes that would bury a regular person alive, walk away untouched. So let's stop pretending. If those fishermen had been wealthy, they'd still be alive. If that president had been poor and black, he'd still be in prison if he were even lucky enough to make it there alive. Two ships passed in the same sea, one filled with innocence and poverty, destroyed. One filled with guilt and power, blessed. And that right there is the real indictment of this nation's so-called justice system. Does anybody remember this madness? Check it out. A certain right-wing podcaster dies. A civilian, a media personality. And suddenly, Donnie orders every flag in America flown to half-mast. Days of mourning, national tribute, a choreographed state-sanctioned spectacle. They packed a memorial service like it was a head of state funeral. Members of his regime in full attendance. They even floated the idea of creating a national holiday in this man's name. How sick these people are, almost cussed. NFL teams were pressured into moments of silence, and anybody who didn't mourn loud enough publicly shamed, vilified, branded un-American. I didn't give a damn. May he rest in piss. But last week in broad daylight, 2 young service members were gunned down just blocks from the White House. Real uniforms, real duty, real sacrifice. And what did this so-called America First supporter of troops regime do? No flags or half-masts, no national mourning, no NFL tributes, no speeches, no outrage, no dignity, no honor. Not one peep. Explain that to me, somebody. Explain how a broadcaster gets the royal treatment, a full-blown MAGA sainthood ceremony, while 2 young service members who actually served the nation get nothing but silence. Explain how a movement screaming respect the military suddenly forgets the military the moment their deaths don't advance the political narrative. Explain how the same people who weaponize troops as props pose with them, march with them for photo ops, wrap themselves in sacrifice like a costume, suddenly lose their voices the minute real blood hits real pavement. And then the final slap in the face. When the tangerine wannabe tyrant was asked if he would attend the funeral of one of these National Guard members, this asshole rambled about winning a golf tournament in West Virginia. That's what was on his mind while families were grieving their children. And that doesn't tell you everything. I don't know what will. It wasn't patriotism. It wasn't leadership. This is failure. This is cowardice. This is fascism dressed up in red, white, and blue. Anyone still standing behind this filth needs to look in the mirror, because what you're supporting is a betrayal of every soldier who ever put on a uniform. Do not comply. Do not normalize it. Do not let them hijack so-called patriotism while spitting on the people who actually defend the country. It's disgusting. And every veteran, every service member, every family who's ever sacrificed deserves better than this cheap, hollow, performative cruelty. This is the Open Eye. WHGE 95.3 FM. This is Patrice Gibbs on the Open Eye. You know, some of y'all get too easily excited. Yeah. Some of y'all get too easily excited. Now, somebody gets up and says something, it sounds, tough and good. You gotta look below the surface. A lot of people are applauding Senator Coons for saying the quiet part out loud. He said the quiet part out loud. But what he actually delivered was not a moment of courage. It was a carefully crafted political shield. Don't get it mixed. When Coons says he believes Secretary Pete Hegseth likely gave the order for the second strike, he wasn't condemning Admiral Bradley. He was protecting him, offering praise, reciting his resume, laying down verbal bubble wrap around a man who carried out a deadly, unauthorized, and potentially, allegedly, criminal act. And let's name the criminal plainly, the criminality plainly. Pete Hegseth issued illegal orders, and now he's transparently blaming a Navy admiral to save his own ass. Oh, we've seen this movie before. The Trump orbit gives unlawful commands, then abandons the very people who obey them. They demand loyalty until accountability comes due. And then they vanish behind lawyers and microphones while a service member stands alone in the courtroom. If you want the clearest example, look at the two admirals at the center of this disaster. See, pay attention, there's levels to this. See, Admiral Alvin Halsey, he's the man that saw the trap coming. He saw it coming. Admiral Alvin Halsey refused Trump's illegal orders. He recognized exactly what was happening, a setup, a political stunt masquerading as military strategy, a chain of command being bent into criminal shape. Halsey did the right thing. He protected his integrity, protected the law, and exited as quickly and cleanly as possible. He saw the storm on the horizon and walked away before it hit. Admiral Frank Bradley, 34-year career at the edge of a cliff. And now look at Admiral Frank M. Bradley, a decorated career, 3 decades of service, now dangling over a cliff because he executed an unlawful order and trusted the wrong civilian leadership. Hegseth, he's already pointing at him. The administration is already whispering his name, and when he shakes out, Bradley is the one facing court-martial, possible prison time, loss of his military pension, and the strain of a war crime investigation. 34 years of service undone in seconds because he followed the wrong man into the wrong command. Meanwhile, Pete Hegseth, the architect of this catastrophe, sits back, points fingers, and pretends to be shocked. Hegseth didn't just issue illegal orders, he weaponized the chain of command and then sacrificed the people inside of it. That's criminal. That's an effing coward. And that is exactly how war crimes get buried under bureaucracy, by blaming the trigger puller instead of the man who demanded the shot. And this is the lesson for every military officer in America. The tangerine tyrant regime will issue unlawful orders and then blame you for following them. They will salute you on Friday and throw you under the bus by Monday. They will praise your service while destroying your future. Just ask Frank Bradley. Just look at Alvin Halsey, who saw the trap and refused to step in it. The bottom line, Coons cracked the door. Cracked the door over on Hegseth's involvement. Yeah, but don't let that overshadow the full truth. If Hegseth gave the order, he is criminally responsible. If Admiral Bradley carried it out, he's accountable too. There is no just following orders, no following orders defense. How many times I told you that? It didn't work in 1945. It didn't work in Vietnam. It ain't going to work today. This is not a mistake. This is not a misunderstanding. This is a chain of command contaminated by political corruption and dripping with criminal liability. Open your eye. WHGE 95.3 FM. Stove and I. Okay, let me get with this here. Let me be absolutely clear. What happened to this 14-year-old biracial girl in Brevard County, Florida, is not just a violation of policy. It is not a lapse in judgment. It is state-sanctioned humiliation. A racist assault on a child's dignity. And a textbook example how institutions weaponize their power against vulnerable families and then lie about it. A black honor student with a 3.8 GPA, no discipline record, repeatedly harassed with racial slurs like the N-word and black monkey. A school that ignored every complaint. Parents who followed the rules, filed reports, demanded action, only to be treated like the problem instead of the victims. And then the unimaginable. 3 illegal strip searches. Not once, not twice, but 3 times, including one in front of a male staff member. No parental consent, no justification, no reasonable suspicion, no contraband found. Just power, abuse, and naked racism masquerading as school discipline. And when confronted, the district suddenly claims, we don't strip search students. We never have. We never will. Please. That's not a statement. It's an insult. It's gaslighting on public stage while a child is in therapy trying to recover from what their policy following staff did to her. It's called retaliation, straight out of the playbook. Let me break that down. When the family reported racial harassment, the school didn't investigate. Instead, they called the Department of Children and Families with false allegations that the girl was pregnant and being molested by her father. Damn. Goddamn. And these claims were proven false the same day by a pediatrician. But the damage was done. Rumors spread, the father's reputation smeared, their pending adoption process put on hold. This isn't negligence, it's retaliation. A school district punishing a black family for daring to demand equal protection under the law. And this isn't isolated. The lawsuit cites case after case, students bullied, parents ignored, administrators untrained, policies disregarded without consequence. The district had the audacity to report 0 bullying cases for years. 0. In a state full of public schools, teenagers, social media, and racial tensions. That alone tells you the cover-up is institutional. The real danger? When a school decides it can violate a child's body without reason. When administrators fabricate claims of pregnancy and molestation. And when whistleblowers become targets, that's not a school, that's a regime. And regimes always protect themselves before they protect children. Do you get that? The Daytons want accountability. But this is bigger than compensation. They are demanding systemic reform, training, oversight, constitutional compliance. Because the Brevard County School Board has proven it cannot be trusted with the lives, safety, or dignity of the students it's supposed to serve. And let's be honest. If this child were white, this would have sparked a statewide emergency, national media, and immediate suspensions. But she wasn't. She was biracial, quiet, brilliant, and vulnerable. The very child institutions think they can violate without consequence. We cannot let this be another story that disappears into legal paperwork and district press releases. A child was strip searched. A family was smeared. And the whole district lied. And if black and brown parents don't stand together, demand protection, demand accountability, demand justice. This won't be the last child they try to break. And yeah, I'm real shaky about that black and brown alliance. Because y'all brown people know who I'm talking to. You ain't caught on yet. That's why we have to stay vigilant. That's why we got to stay loud. And this is why no matter how comfortable it makes them, we got to stay woke. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. WHGE 95.3 FM. You're enjoying the Open Eye, I hope. All right. Remember the Goon Squad? The Goon Squad isn't a Mississippi story. It's an American warning. Let's be absolutely clear. What happened in Rankin County wasn't road cops. It wasn't bad apples, and damn sure wasn't isolated. This was a 20-year reign of terror carried out by a self-named goon squad of white deputies who tortured, sexually assaulted, humiliated, and attempted to murder citizens, black and white, with the full knowledge of the system that looked the other way. A Mississippi deputy, Christian Dedman, now serving 40 years, didn't just beat and tase people. According to new lawsuits, he sexually assaulted a man during a traffic stop, rubbing his genitals on the victim's face as other deputies held him down. He then fired a gun inches from the man's head and threatened to have him killed in jail if he told anyone. This wasn't policing. This was state-sanctioned sexual violence and torture. And it wasn't a one-time event. It mirrored what they did to two black men, Corey Jenkins and Eddie Parker, who were tortured for hours, called racial slurs, humiliated with sexual devices, beaten, shot, and jailed on fabricated charges, all because a neighbor didn't like them helping a disabled white woman. And this is not the past. This is Jim Crow with body cams turned on. And here's the part America hates to admit. They operated like this for 2 decades because people in power let them. The sheriff's office had complaint after complaint, lawsuit after lawsuit, eyewitness after eyewitness, and nothing happened. No discipline, no intervention, no justice. Because the victims were poor, vulnerable, black, or politically disposable. And because the system itself benefits from pretending that brutality is a few bad apples instead of a rotten orchard with roots deep in American soil. Priscilla Perkins said it best. This is the hidden shame of Mississippi and the hidden truth of America. You don't get a 2-decade torture ring without supervisors who looked away, prosecutors who don't ask questions, judges who trust uniforms over victims, and a public conditioned to think that's just how policy works. Deadman may be in prison now, But the culture that protected him still sits behind desks, wears badges, collects pensions, and shapes policy. So the real question is not, how did this happen? The real question is, why do we keep pretending this isn't happening everywhere? Rankin County is not an exception. It's a glimpse. A glimpse into what happens when unaccountable power, racial hatred, political indifference, and generational systems of abuse collide behind the shield of law enforcement. If America ever wants to stop burying its victims, paying out hush money settlements, or rewriting history, then America must finally confront the truth. The Goon Squad isn't just a gang of deputies. They are a symptom of a disease this country refuses to cure. Now, let's really sit with this. Take our time. Take our time, because America never has. I want to thank Dr. Joy DeGrye for giving us understanding on this. For 339 years, the black experience in this country was a non-stop, state-sanctioned trauma machine. Not a momentary ordeal, not an era, a multi-generational conveyor belt of pain. People were born into trauma and died in trauma without ever seeing a single day of safety, autonomy, or human dignity. Not a single goddamn day. Think about that. Families lived entire lifetimes without a single breath where their soul wasn't under assault. And the world watched. The churches watched. The medical profession watched. The universities watched. Governments watched. White society not only watched, it profited. And in all those centuries of brutality, who came to help us heal? No one. There were no grief counselors for the mother whose baby was ripped from her arms. There's no mental health specialist for the father forced to watch his wife raped by another man. How the hell you live with that? There were no therapists for children traumatized by the auction block, the whip, the lynching tree, or the sound of their parents screaming in the night. There were doctors, yes. But many were the ones experimenting on us. Or they were scientists, sure. But many were the ones measuring our skulls to prove we were inferior. Oh, there were churches. But many were the ones using scripture to justify the chains. So let's ask it again slowly. Who helped us? Nobody. America never paused the cruelty long enough to acknowledge the psychological carnage it created. It never said these people deserve healing. These people deserve restoration. No. Instead, the system doubled down. And then one day they said, you're free. Free into what? Free how? Free with what tools to repair the multi-generational psychological wounds inflicted on us? Dr. King broke that down. We were free without land. We were free without protection, without resources, without reparations, without therapy, without justice, without acknowledgement, and without even a goddamn apology. Trauma this deep does not evaporate because a document was signed. And here's the part America refuses to face. Did the trauma stop after slavery? Hell no. It just changed clothes. The chains became laws. The plantations became prisons. The slave patrols became police departments. The overseers became judges. The whips became policies. The lynching tree became the chokehold. From Reconstruction massacres, the Black Wall Street burning, the medical experimentation on federal funding, the Jim Crow terror, the mass incarceration, to systemic police violence, the trauma not only continued, it evolved. The same society that created the trauma also created the silence around the trauma. And then they had the audacity to tell us not to talk about it. Why are you still angry? Why can't you just move on? Oh, slavery was a long time ago. We gave you civil rights. Isn't that enough? You're being divisive. You stop bringing up the past. No other people on earth are told to suppress centuries of pain for the comfort of the very society that caused it. Jewish brothers and sisters are never told, get over the Holocaust. Indigenous people are not told, stop talking about genocide. But black people, we are expected to swallow 339 years of hell and pretend that it never even happened. We were denied healing, then punished for needing it. We were denied justice, then blamed for demanding it. We were denied humanity, then accused of being angry when we reclaim it. And here's the miracle. With no national therapy, we built nations within the nation. With no collective mental health support, we built music that healed the entire planet. With no safety, we built communities that sheltered one another. With no acknowledgement, we carried our ancestors on our backs and still walked forward. With generational trauma coursing through our DNA, we created beauty, strength, resilience, brilliance, cultural, science, art, leadership, movements that changed the world. Everything we achieved uphill against the weight of centuries with hands scarred from pulling ourselves out of pits we didn't dig. And let's tell the truth plain. Black people in America are not just survivors of trauma. We are the greatest case study of human resilience in world history. We are not here because America helped us. We are here because America could not break us. We are here because our ancestors refused to die with their hope. We are here because our spirit outlasted every attempt to crush it. We're here because we are the descendants of people who took hell and still found a way to build heavens in their heart. That's who we are. That's our legacy. That's our strength. That's our miracle. This is the Open Eye. WHGE 95.3 FM. I'm Patrice Gibbs. This is the Open Eye. Have you wondered what's going to happen to America? We don't have to guess. We don't need a crystal ball. Because 4 different scholars across 4 different centuries studying in 4 differently, completely different disciplines all came back with the exact same answer. Ibn Khaldun, the 14th century North African scholar. Ibn Khaldun, the father of sociology, studied what he called asabiya, social cohesion. He found that great nations don't fall because of outside enemies. They fall because internal division eats them alive from within. He said a society loses its shared purpose and fractures into hostile tribes. Collapse becomes inevitable. America's political polarization, its racial divisions, its social fragmentation. This is Ibn Khaldun's pattern exactly. Sir John Gibbs, the British general, 20th century. He analyzed 3,000 years of empire and found that they all last roughly 250 years before a decline. What's America, 249 years old? Right on schedule. Gibbs said the final stage of empire is marked by massive wealth inequality, a loss of civic virtue, internal hatred, leaders who prioritize profit over people, and citizens who retreat into selfishness and spectacle. Sound familiar? Yeah. And there were Strauss and Howe, American historians in the 21st century. They mapped 80-year generational cycles and found that every 4 generations, America enters a historical winter, a crisis period where institutions fail and national identity fractures. According to their model, America's crisis peaks right now, mid-20s and in the early 30s, 2030s. The same timing as the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, and the Great Depression, and World War II. Every 80 years, the country fights for its soul. America has reached the next reckoning. Then there's Ray Dalio, modern hedge fund analyst. Dalio studied every reserve currency empire collapse, from Rome to the Dutch, the British, the Chinese, and other dynasties. He identified 3 unavoidable markers of a collapsing superpower: massive debt, extreme wealth inequality, explosive political polarization. Does America have all 3? Yes, at historic levels. He said, once these 3 conditions overlap, the empire enters a dangerous, irreversible spiral. 4 frameworks, 4 centuries, 4 disciplines, 1 conclusion. All right. Ibn Khaldun wasn't talking to Gibbs. Gibbs never read Strauss and Howe. Strauss and Howe weren't studying Dalio, and Dalio wasn't studying any of them. Yet all 4, separated by oceans, time, and culture, arrived at identical conclusions. America is at the breaking point, not approaching it, standing on it. Can America become the first empire in history to break the pattern, to reverse the decline, to heal internal divisions before they become fatal? Because if we don't understand the pattern, if we can't interrupt it, and empires don't collapse because they had to, they collapse because they refuse to listen to the warning signs. Guess what? Get you a passport, because America's out of time, even if it's not out of choices. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. All right, Brother Lawrence. Alan Lawrence. host of the Weekend Review right here on WHGE. Tune in and catch it. All right. Let me say this before I get out of here. America is not just struggling. America is showing its true face, and a whole lot of people are pretending they don't see it. We're living under a regime that can fly the flag at half-mast for a podcaster, but not for 2 young service members murdered blocks from the White House. A regime that can pander to racists, excuse corruption, and call immigrants garbage on national television, then expect us to salute like trained pets. No, those days are over. We are watching the deliberate erosion of truth, the weaponization of government, the rewriting of history to protect cowards and criminals, and the slow, calculated grinding down of our democracy by people who don't love this country. They love control. But here's the part they never saw coming. The people they tried to silence are the people who are now speaking the loudest. The communities they try to crush are the ones refusing to bow. And the truth they tried to bury is pushing through the concrete like a blade of unstoppable grass. We are the descendants of miracles, of Africans who survived the unspeakable, of veterans who served a country that didn't always serve them back, of workers and mothers and elders who carried this nation on their backs with no thanks and no safety net. And after everything we've endured, from slavery to Jim Crow to Trump's America, we're still here. We're still brilliant. We still build. We still fight. You can't stop us. Don't let despair walk into silence. Don't let apathy convince you this is normal. Don't let these petty tyrants gaslight you into thinking your outrage is the problem. Your outrage is your clarity, your voice, your power, your unity is their nightmare. This moment in history isn't meant to break us. It's meant to expose what needs to fall so we can build what should have been all along. So stay watchful, stay intentional, stay rooted in truth and community, in the ancestors who expected us to keep pushing forward. Remember, you are your ancestors' dream. You are their ancestors' nightmare. This is Patrice Gibbs on The Open Eye. That's right, Sister Tracy. Get your passport. Turn your eye to Africa. Watch what's going on. All right. WHGE 95.3 FM. This is Open Eye closing out. I hope you learned something, because I learned something before I got here. And as we always tell you, destiny determines who enters your life, but you decide who stays. Therefore, value those who value you, and don't treat those as a priority who treat you as an option. This is Open Eye on WHGE 95.3 FM. I'm Patrice Gibbs. Thanks for joining me. All right. As I always tell you, global African supremacy. I'm thinking about doing a special show where I talk about just that. All right. Like I always tell you, global African supremacy, because the world was a better place when the black man ruled. Peace.